I have with me Jeff Rauseo, the host of the podcast and YouTube channel Films at Home, where he does reviews for 4K releases, interviews directors, producers, and independent distribution partners, and covers all things home media. He's been a physical media collector since 2012 and has reviewed hundreds of releases since 2014. Jeff, welcome to the show. Glad you could join me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is exciting.
So why don't you start by telling me a little bit about yourself and what got you into building a physical media collection in the first place?
Yeah, so you gave me a pretty good intro there. So yeah, that's sort of what I do right now. I started a podcast just about a year ago now. I've been doing that, and the YouTube channel has been going since late 2017. So I'm going on about 6 years on YouTube. And prior to that, I was writing reviews and posting them on my own blog on different websites. So I've been sort of doing that, like you said, since 2014, and then really been focused on the sort of video content stuff since 2017. So what really got me into physical media, it's a funny story, but it was totally by accident. 2012 was when I started collecting, purely because I got a little bit of money when I was in college working a job, and I had just enough that I was like, you know what? I'm going to buy myself one of these surround sound systems for my still in my parents' bedroom, right? Like still in my childhood bedroom. But I was like, I'm going to really deck this room out. So I spent it was like $400 at the time. It's like a little 5-channel Samsung home theater in a box, but it happened to have a Blu-ray player. And up to that point, I had never watched anything beyond DVD. So like Blu-ray's been out for like 5 or 6 years at this point. I haven't bought a single one. So I'm late to the game, but that did it for me. I got this player and I was like, well, what the hell's a Blu-ray? I guess I should go to Walmart and buy some, and I'll start with my favorite movies, Denzel. I bought Training Day. That was my first ever Blu-ray, and a couple of his other movies. And then it just it went from let me get every Denzel movie to, well, let me get every movie that I really like because these look fantastic and they sound amazing, to, well, boy, I better start just grabbing everything. If I'm going to watch it, I might as well watch it on physical media. And so, thousands of discs later, I was looking for a community, and that's sort of how I got started creating my own content. I was just trying to get more involved and knowledgeable about what I was sinking all my money into.
So this would have been back when Netflix was still known for mailing stuff out. Were you deep into that as well, kind of to like test ahead of time? Should I buy this? Oh, I'll rent it through Netflix first. Or were you just all out for, going down to the store, I'm just going to throw my entire paycheck into a bunch of more Blu-rays?
When I started collecting seriously, it was just like, I'm going to the store and buying. Like, because even in 2012, it blew my mind how cheap some of the stuff was. Like, even then, you go to Walmart and I'm like, all right, I want Training Day. And this is back when they still had them on the shelves. And it's like $7.99, right? And I used to be in Costco every weekend. That was our big weekend trip with the and like the discs are like $5-10. I'm like, this is, crazy, because I'm used to seeing, VHS tapes and stuff that sell for $30-40, even early DVDs, like crazy prices. But it is funny, Netflix, my household was a very early subscriber to Netflix DVD through the mail. So I did do a lot of that, which is probably why I never bought anything up to that point. We were like, I think we were DVD through the mail customers in like 2003. Like, we were very, very early in the days of Netflix, and we had that for, I would say, 7 or 8 years. Once they did the streaming, my parents stopped getting them, but man, we were very early in that. So that probably influenced me in a way.
That's interesting, because I'm about the same age as you, and I don't quite remember when my parents subscribed to DVD by mail via Netflix, but they got that. It was mostly them dictating what movies we were going to get. Yeah. So my introduction to buying physical was mostly going into like GameStop, because they sold used DVDs back then, and then just taking all of my high school job money and buying every action movie on the shelf that I could find.
Yeah, no, that is, I did have some access to the Netflix queue, and not that, I don't know if anybody even remembers that at these days, but yeah, the Netflix queue, we would get 3 at a time. So it was sort of like we had the big premium plan to get 3 DVDs. So it was like, there'd be one for one, my mom would get one, my dad would get one, and it was like me and my 2 brothers we'd figure out what that third one was going to be, and we had our little rotation where we all got one. So I did have some say. I did get to see some pretty good stuff, and but that, yeah, I mean, it was a total influence. Like, I always had physical media in the house, so once I wouldn't even call it big boy money, because it definitely wasn't, but once I had just a little bit of money, I was like, all right, well, let me go exploring, because that's honestly where I've learned a lot about film too, just through physical media. Like, there's so many movies that I had never heard of before I started collecting. So it's really opened my mind in that way.
So that has me kind of curious, because you talked about buying from bigger stores, Costco, Walmart, that sort of thing, at least where you got your start with buying physical. But on your show, you've talked about buying from less well-known boutique places. Bull Moose is one that you've mentioned a bunch of times. Vinegar Syndrome is another. So I'm kind of curious, how did you branch out from the mainstream places you were buying from to places like those?
Yeah, I think there was sort of like I guess I was kind of lucky, because right when I started collecting is when Shout Factory or Scream Factory launched, and I'm a big horror movie fan. So that was like the first boutique label I found. I was like, oh, okay, they don't really have this stuff in stores. There's more than just what's in Target and Walmart, right? There's a much bigger world. That was my discovery into it. And then through that, I bought a Criterion Collection release totally by accident, not even knowing, just knowing that was the only way I could get the Blu-ray of The Game, David Fincher's movie, which I loved. And so I slowly was kind of picking them. And then that's when I got involved online. I got into forums. I got onto Reddit. I got into, even building an Instagram page, and started seeing what other people were posting, and immediately got drawn to that stuff a lot more than the mainstream. So I would say definitely, where I started, everything was at the big box stores. Now it's like 95% of what I buy is either from a smaller, like you mentioned, Bull Moose. I buy from them. They're local. I can actually go in there, which is a wonderful thing. They're local to New Hampshire and Maine. Or Orbit DVD has a great website. They're out of North Carolina, but they stock a lot of stuff overseas. And then, direct to the Vinegar Syndromes, the Criterion, Kino Lorber, Severin, Synapse, whoever it may be. So I sort of just slowly started putting feelers out there, like, where can I get this movie? Where can I get this weird movie? And these names started popping up. And I mean, I'm still finding new labels, and talking to them on the podcast. But that's one of the best parts about physical media lately, is like how many of these labels have sprung up and do so much more than the bare minimum that sometimes you'll get from like the most mainstream release. I mean, the packaging, the special features, the artwork, everything that goes into these things is insane, and you pay for it, but we're so lucky to even like have that option.
There's a few different places that I can go from what you just said, because you mentioned also a bunch of times on your show the explosion of steel books that are getting released, and then also the fact that when you're actually going to a store, a Bull Moose type store, not a Walmart or Best Buy type store, at least for me, what I get out of those experiences is not going with the intent of, I want to buy X movie. It's, I just want to browse whatever shelves they have, and whatever poor soul is with me. Sorry, we're going to be here for at least an hour and a half, and I have to physically remove myself from the store. Otherwise, I'll spend all day there. So how do you go about finding like the less well-known titles? Is it like the research, or is it just the lucky discovery?
It's a lot of it, honestly, is lucky discovery, either through, a lot of it's come through my content, like talking to people on the podcast, like, they'll bring up some obscure movie from the 70s I've never heard of, and I'll be like, well, okay, guess what I'm buying when I get off of this interview with you? You know, it's, or people in the YouTube comments or people sending me Instagram DMs. Did you see this release is coming out? And I'm like, well, no, but you know, it sounds interesting. So a lot of it just kind of comes naturally through having conversations with other collectors. But I do the same thing you do. Like when I go into those stores, even when there's like an online, even when there's like the Kino Lorber sale that's going on right now in the spring, I'm like meticulously going through 20 different web pages of 25 movies a piece. And I'm like reading each one and looking at artwork. And it's like, I do love that Bull Moose experience because it's the closest thing you have to like browsing the shelves at your video store. And they have got me many times buying movies purely just because the artwork looked cool. I go right to the horror movie section. So there's always something weird in there that somebody's traded in that I've never heard of. So I do love doing that. And usually my wife is the poor soul who's with me, who has to like, she can only last so long in the books, you know, before I'm like, all right, fine, I'll go. Here's my stack. Let's get out of here.
Yeah. There's a place somewhat close to my house called Book Off. And apparently they're a pretty big chain. But I hadn't really heard of them before wandering in one day. And they had like an entire row that was nothing but steel books, the most steel books I've ever seen in a single place. And I'm not much of a steel book collector, but I was like, oh, I mean, I have to buy one.
I mean, you're there, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't want to waste my time. Right. So I picked up Mad Max Fury Road. So there's that. And I have Live Free or Die Hard as my other only steelbook, which I just happened to buy when I was in high school because as a teenager, I saw that in a Best Buy and I thought, whoa, I've never seen a metal DVD case before. Right. I just got to get one of those. But hearing you talk about all the unique artwork and stuff, like especially with Lionsgate, apparently they're doing a lot of neat things with steelbook releases, has me starting to think, maybe it's time.
Yeah, they have. I was a big steelbook chaser in my early days. I was the guy who, I worked at a company that we had a Target like 2 minutes down the street. So like in a Best Buy about 10 minutes away. So I'm the guy on Tuesday on my lunch break who's like getting to Best Buy, trying to pick up his pre-order or trying to find the last one on the shelf. Like every week I was there and I was chasing it pretty hard. And then it felt like it got a little out of control with like scalping and flipping of the steelbooks. Got kind of nuts on eBay, especially like Marvel, the Star Wars stuff, any of the real popular movies. So I kind of backed out of it for a little bit. But Lionsgate has me coming back because they're not like super limiting these. They're making them available. They're putting a ton of effort into the art. They not only have the steelbook, but they give you that protective plastic outer case, basically a slip cover, which also plays into the artwork. And they've done some really cool, tricks with that. So they're converting me back. I have upgraded quite a few just standard Blu-rays or standard 4Ks to their new steelbook versions. They're doing a really good job.
Are there any releases that are set to come out you're looking forward to?
This week it should be in the mail now actually, but there's a new House of 1,000 Corpses 20th anniversary steelbook, and there's a steelbook and there's a collector's edition box set, which is very cool. So I've actually got both heading my way because I do like that movie. I'm a horror fan, but they just announced Lord of War, the Nicolas Cage movie, is getting a pretty sweet steelbook. So if you go back, like some of the better ones, the American Psycho one is a must have. That's got one of the coolest like slip covers to it.
I just want to say for the listeners out there, we're recording this on April 14th. And at least according to Twitter, this is the 23rd anniversary of American Psycho, since you bring that up.
No shit. I had no idea. Well, there you go. But that steelbook is incredible. So, and now's as good a time as ever to pick that one up. And there's like a Starship Troopers one, which is super cool. And Reservoir Dogs, the one they did for that, is awesome. It plays with the ear, which is very fun. Like they're having some fun with those. So I definitely would recommend going back. There's got to be, I don't know, 20 or 30 of them at this point that are available in this same style. They've really cranked them out the last few years, and it seems like every month or so they'll announce a new one. But those are the two latest, is House of a Thousand Corpses and the Lord of War.
Yeah, it's pretty cool seeing the creativity that studios are putting into these physical releases, because obviously people consume most of their stuff through streaming now, and the DVD, its heyday of sales is long past. So now we're kind of in the realm of enthusiast collectors. I would have said like me and you, but really it's just you. My comparison, or my collection cannot compare to yours from what I've seen. How many movies do you have anyway?
There's about 220, between 2,000 and 2,500 in the collection right now. And I only give you a range because I have been doing a little curation. I was as high as 3,500, pushing 4,000. And I've had to make some just like life decisions on which ones to keep. So I'm right around that 2,000 to 2,500 range seems like what's manageable. So that's where I'm trying to keep it. So that's where I'm about right now. It's somewhere in there.
So then for someone who doesn't really buy physical at all, and they like watching stuff, but they have their Netflix, they have their Max, not HBO Max anymore, just Max.
Just plain Max.
How would you go about convincing someone to start buying stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that I say is like, I would never expect or push anybody to get to the level that I'm at, or even, the top 80% of collectors are at. Like, even having a couple hundred movies in your collection is a lot for some people to store. And I totally get that. And that's why streaming is so convenient. I stream lots of stuff myself still. I'm not going to lie and sit here and say I do lots of streaming. I have all the services. But what I'd say is, like, if you have a movie that you really love, that, you want to just have in the best possible presentation, you want to have, those behind the scenes features that you're only going to get on the disc in many cases. You can occasionally find them on YouTube, but a lot of stuff is exclusive. It's on those discs. And when it's not on those discs anymore, it's kind of gone. And, there's something to be said about just having a physical copy of that movie, just in case. You don't know tomorrow, you don't know in a year, you don't know in 2 years, 5 years where that movie is going to be. You don't know, like, there's so many crazy rights things and legal things that happen in Hollywood and between these streaming services that everyone's now merging, and it's messy out there, and you don't know where this stuff is going to be. So if there's something you want to make sure you have access to, that's the best way to do it. Go out and buy the disc, and you don't have to buy the disc for everything. I would never say go and, everybody go blow your mortgage on a physical media collection. But, if you're a huge fan of Star Wars, like, go get those 4K discs. They're going to look the best those movies have ever looked. If you like The Godfather, there's an excellent new 4K restoration out there that blows away anything you'll see on streaming, anything you'll see on TNT when they run it for the 80th time this week. Like, it just blows it away. And that's an experience you can only get on the disc. And so, if you have that love for a movie, that's how I get the person who's firmly against it to sort of buy in, is like, oh, okay. Like, yeah, I really do love Jaws. And you know what? I should own a copy of that in the best possible version, especially if you've invested any money too into even just a decent 4K TV, or, you get the most out of it. At least buy your favorites, have 10 or 12. And I think even that would go a long way to help the industry a little bit right now. So that's what I kind of preach. Nobody needs 2,000. I understand.
Except
firmly
you.
I'm firmly in the minority there, and the craziness of it all. Like, nobody needs that. But I think everybody should have have your top 10 at least, and TV shows especially. That's another big one, because if you can get a TV show on a disc, especially if it's like a streaming show, go get it, because next thing you know, HBO, Max, whatever they want to call themselves today, is pulling it off and canceling it, and they're disappearing. So if you like that stuff, you've got to go out and make sure you have access to it.
It does annoy me that the majority of stuff that I do like watching on streaming doesn't have a physical equivalent. For good reason, obviously, with like the scale that these companies operate at, they can afford to make stuff for much more like niche demographics. Yep. There is this mini series on Hulu, or at least produced by FX, but aired on Hulu, called Devs, which was done by Alex Garland. Most recently, he did Men, and then also Ex Machina and Annihilation. Yeah. Incredible show. Like, the cinematography was great. The acting was all very Alex Garland acting. Let's just say it's not for everybody, but like the ideas that they covered were really, really cool. And I can't tell you how many times I've tried searching Devs Blu-ray release, and it's always just like a Reddit comment at the top. Did they ever do a physical release for this? No, they haven't.
Yeah, and there's a lot like that. And I think, that's honestly, if you have a show like that has a following, I'll say people are going to find a way to get it one way or another. If you take it away, like it's 2023, right? There's ways to get things. People have things saved, the legality of that,
Yeah, obviously you can't see us right now listening, but Jeff is winking aggressively at the camera.
Yeah, it's obviously, wink, wink. There's going to be ways, but it would be nice to have more official ways to get these things, even if they're made on demand, even if it had to be they're available and you pay a little bit of a premium, but it's manufactured on demand for you because they don't want to print 1,000 of them. They don't think they'll sell. Well, at least have the option for the fans to get it, because it is a little scary. Like, I talked to film preservation people about like lost films from like, 20s, 30s, 40s, even up to the 70s and 80s. There's stuff that's being lost that's on film stock. There's a lot of stuff that's going to be lost in this digital age because like they removed we have entire movies. We have a Batgirl movie that literally was done and made that they just deleted.
Yeah,
it's kind of, nobody saw that.
It's kind of bonkers when you think about it too. It's like it should be easier to preserve stuff now that you can have digital backups.
Right, and I'm sure they're preserved somewhere, but they're not accessible. And maybe they're not. I don't know for sure. Like, if maybe they're on a hard drive in some executive's office, and it's like they're not really preserved. Like, somebody could throw that in a dumpster and it's gone. So it is a little scary. Like, there's so much content, and then it's almost harder to access some of it than it has been before, which is an odd. It should definitely be easier to access these things.
Yeah, I'd say the most high profile example I'm aware of is that horror movie Event Horizon, which must be at least like 20 years old by now, but it was infamously shot and then aggressively recut just based on studio interference and kind of like audience reaction. And due to degradation or fire or something, the original film negatives were lost. And now that we're at the point where there's all these, we're at the 10th anniversary, the 20th anniversary, the 30th anniversary of a movie, it would be perfect to release the original director's cut of Event Horizon. But they can never do that now because they've lost the original.
Yeah, and there is kind of a cool thing about physical media too, that they have been able to bring stuff back that wouldn't. I think of like Halloween 6 because I like the series, and there's a producer's cut which had always been sort of floating, but nobody had ever released, and like that got released on physical, and I don't know that it exists anywhere else. So like sometimes physical media actually will drive that stuff, and that'll be the way, because what are they going to do? Like, it's not popular enough to maybe like do a theatrical run again or anything. It's not that big a movie, but it's a very interesting piece of horror history. And there's other examples of director's cuts that people are clamoring for every day. And, they just found new scenes from Planes, Trains, and Automobiles for the first time ever that were put on the 4K disc. Like, that's where they exist now. So there's some really cool stuff that, when they dive in to do a physical release, sometimes they find these things that have been sitting there forever that have never been accessible. And that's sort of the avenue they use for it, which in a lot of the boutique, the smaller labels too, that do that big preservation work, find a bunch of this stuff. So it's a really cool, like when you support physical media, you sort of are supporting that film preservation and film restoration effort that I don't think a lot of people realize is going on every day.
Yeah, there was an interview you were doing with Cliff Stevenson, a special features producer. And if I'm remembering right, he was talking about a Rambo collection ultimate cut where they were trying to pull together every piece of behind the scenes special features content ever made about any of the Rambo movies and putting it all together there.
Yeah.
Which, for one, I'm super into that. But as a follow-up, do you have any special features favorites of your own?
Well, anytime there's a John Carpenter commentary, I love that. So if you've never listened to John, and I love it because he's like the most humble guy in the world. Like it almost feels like he hates every movie he's ever made, and he'll say things and he'll see a scene and he'll be like, the guy who's doing the commentary will ask him like, well, how'd you do that? And what'd you think of that? And he'd be like, I don't know. That was kind of dumb. I just kind of threw that together. And like, it's just hilarious. It sounds like, listening to your grandfather if he made like the big 80s horror movies, just kind of like so humble and so just like, yeah, that kind of sucked. I don't know why I did that. Like he's very funny and relatable on his commentary track. So I do love that. Anything James Cameron's done on his, I've seen some of the new Avatar movies, special features. I mean, he doesn't hold back. Like he shows you the whole process. Like, why did this movie take 15 years to make? Well, you start to realize why when you dive into special features. And he has great features for other stuff like Titanic, and hopefully we're getting that soon, a new release on 4K. And I just, his features are always super in depth because he cares so much about the process, and he's always, bleeding edge on all the technology. And so those are super interesting. But, really anytime you can just get like filmmakers to sit down with their movie and do that commentary track. Like if you want to go to film school in your living room, like that's the way to do it. Cause it's incredible the insights you'll get from these guys, especially some of the better tracks where like they'll have the director, the cinematographer, the writer, like, the special effects guy. And I mean, you just in 90 minutes while watching that movie, all of a sudden you've discovered how a movie is made. So that is a really huge part of physical that, it occasionally comes to digital. Nowadays, it's hit or miss. I mean, but if you stream a movie on Netflix or something, like if you don't purchase the digital copy, you're not getting any of that stuff on just like a streaming service. That just, they want you to watch the next thing. What you're getting is a trailer for the next movie that they want you to go on to. So that's a really unique piece that is still pretty much in the realm of physical media only.
Yeah, oftentimes when I'm looking for something to buy, if it doesn't have a commentary, if it's not for a movie that I really, really like the director, or I want that movie specifically, it'll pretty much become an instant no buy for me. And honestly, I kind of feel like me getting into podcasts comes from me liking commentary tracks so much. And, film school for 90 minutes, more like film school for 4 hours, multiples of 4 hours, because I have multiple times listened to the commentary tracks for the extended Lord of the Rings movies. And those are incredible.
Yeah.
And it's not just the director's commentary track, but then you have the special effects commentary track, and then you have the actor's commentary track, and then the other actor's commentary track. Right. And then that's Fellowship of the Ring. Then you got to move on to the next one. So that's always a really good time.
Yeah. And you make a good point. Like that's another incentive to buy physical media. And it's another reason to like really look at what you're getting and do a little bit of research. Cause if you're just getting a Blu-ray disc that has the movie on it, you could, for most people, you get the same experience through a decent, HBO stream or something. So like, why are you going to pay the $15, $20, whatever it is to own it. Well, there's a commentary, or there's multiple commentaries. There's 3 hours of behind the scenes special features. There's, unseen interviews, potentially sometimes from older, directors who have died. The release of Red Eye that just came out on 4K from Paramount Presents has a brand new interview with Wes Craven, who's been gone for, a decade now. A brand new interview with him that they just found while doing, researching source material. It's like, you're only getting that by buying that disc. If you're a Wes Craven fan, that's a huge reason to buy it. So there's always cool stuff like that. It's a huge reason to buy physical media for sure, and a huge reason to do your research. And it's why I cover special features in all of my reviews. Like, I'll talk, how's the video and how's the audio and how's the new restoration, transfer, everything. But I make sure to cover that packaging and special features, because that's who you're catering to now. It's not the mainstream person. It's the collector. It's the film enthusiast. Like, that's who's buying these things. So that is a huge piece of it.
Yeah, it's nice to have better artwork and stuff to, have your movies as display pieces. But the great differentiator to me is like, okay, I could watch it online on some streaming site, but what else do I get? What am I actually paying for? I've seen this movie already. That's why I'm buying it. So what are you throwing in for me?
No, totally. And it, as streaming gets closer and closer, and it is creeping closer in quality to, what they can put on a disc, and it has a little ways to go, and internet bandwidth has a little ways to go too. But, there'll be a day. There's definitely a day in the future where that quality argument isn't as big a deal anymore. And so your argument has to be, it's a display piece. It has extra content. It has stuff that's exclusive to the disc. Like, those are going to become the selling points. So it's good to see that people, we mentioned Lionsgate, we mentioned Vinegar Syndrome, like these types of companies are doing that now. They're giving you a full on display piece, borderline like art piece for your movie room or collection. And that's where they need to head. So it's smart. I love talking about this stuff. So you cut me out. I mean, I usually just say an hour just because I don't find that people usually listen for more than an hour. But you tell me where you want to cut it. But I can, this is what I do. I talk about this stuff, so I can go forever.
Yes, I could go indefinitely, just like wandering the rows of your local secondhand movie store.
Yep.
But more important thing. So your collection started off with buying a sound system, of all things, that happened to come with a Blu-ray player. Where is your setup at now? Because I hope you've evolved it in the 11 years since.
We've upgraded a little bit. Yeah, that first sound system was the Blu-ray player was the receiver. So like all the speakers, it wasn't even speaker wire. Like they had plugs on them that were like, this goes in the left, this goes in the right, this is front, this is center. And they were these cheap plastic speakers. And we're talking like a 40-inch, 1080p TV. And God, I don't know what I was even using, like the Samsung player, I guess, that came with it. And then eventually like a PS4, like that was it. So we've upgraded now. I've got down here, I record the stuff in the basement, so I've got it all behind me. Not that anybody can see that because this is an audio format, but I can explain. So we've got right now is a 65-inch LG OLED C2 4K TV. So a really nice TV. I'm looking forward to what their next couple years models are, but this one is very nice. And then I've got a Rievon 4K player, which is a brand. It's actually out of France. Really high quality 4K player. It's also like an SACD player. It can do a lot of different audio formats as well. But if anybody out there knows like what the old Oppo 4K players looked like this thing's a tank. So that one came from France. Same company who does Zappity, and does some NAS stuff. They made this, or they distributed it. So I have that from them. And then the receiver is a Denon Dolby Atmos capable receiver. And then I've got my SVS sound system. Everything speaker, subwoofer is SVS sound too. I've really enjoyed. I've had that same system now for 7 years. And it works just as good as it did the first day. So I got these two big tower speakers in the front, left and right, big beefy center speaker for that dialogue. And then a couple of their bookshelf speakers serve as the rear surrounds. And then a couple of they call them prime elevation speakers, but they're essentially like your height speakers, your Dolby Atmos type speakers. So it's a 5.1.2 system with their big, I got this monster truck of a subwoofer from them, which is just a beast I'm glad it's in the basement now, because if it was on any other floor, it would shake the house. Like it's insane. So we've come a long way. Everything's upgraded to the point where, I'm happy. It's not I'll definitely say like it's not the highest end thing out there, but I realize I'm very fortunate, and I also realize how much money I've spent on some of this stuff. So it's pretty damn good.
Well, you're talking to somebody who plays their Blu-rays off of a PlayStation 4. So my setup isn't quite the same level as yours is.
Still a pretty solid player.
I got to say I'm very impressed. The one thing I'd say that keeps me from upgrading at all, because I don't have a sound bar, like all I have is just the TV by itself. If I raise the volume above 20, I'll usually get chastised for playing movies too loud. So as much as I would like to have even half the setup of yours, I'm pretty sure that it would get shut down immediately.
Yeah, that is, you know what? If the soundbar might be good for you then, because those TV speakers are in the back. Is it because you've got like a neighbor or somebody on the other side of the wall, or is it just? No.
We're in a house, so okay. All the criticism comes from inside the house.
Gotcha. Well, that one's a little bit tougher. That's why my stuff's in the basement, because I've got a nice big 75-inch TV up in the living room, but that just has a single soundbar for watching TV, and I get the same. I watch some movies up there sometimes, and that volume stays right around 20, or I get yelled at. So I hear you. Something to look forward to. I couldn't have done all this until we just moved into a new house a few months ago, and I had a setup in a bedroom, and it worked. But this is definitely much better when you get kids upstairs trying to sleep, that you're not blasting the movie in the bedroom 2 doors down. I'm now 2 floors removed from them, which has made it much easier to watch things, which is good.
If you could go all out, what would you upgrade, if anything?
Yeah, so the goal someday down here in this basement is definitely to go all out. And probably once the kids are like, I'm going to wait, but like when they get to an age where like they'll appreciate it, we're going to go all out. And I'll probably get, like right now I have a couple of seats from Valencia home theater seating, which are great, like leather seats, recliner, the whole 9 yards, all power stuff. I'll probably do like a couple of rows of those and upgrade that. And then I definitely want to upgrade the screen size, which is going to mean I have to shift the whole room 90 degrees to put this on a different wall than what it's on now. But I want to go big. I've played around with projectors in the past. I've had as big as a 110-inch screen in rooms in the past that I've played with and tested, and they were always it just didn't make sense for the room size, but it works here. So someday there'll be, the 120-inch screen, couple rows of theater seats, and then, some sort of higher end 4K projector, probably a short throw, because I really like how those work and kind of give you a smaller footprint. But that's where I'd upgrade first for sure, is like the size of the screen. I want that movie theater feel in the house. And someday, we're probably talking like 10 years down the road, but someday that's where we'll go.
So you never have to leave again, am I right?
Never leave again. Just order stuff off of Amazon. Just get HelloFresh delivered to your house. Just never go to the grocery store, and just watch movies all day. Like, that's it.
Where do you stand on the projectors versus TV? Because at least all the projectors I've seen, there's kind of like a noticeable step down in quality from like a relatively smaller TV. Like, if you put the money out, has it gotten to the point where a good enough projector is literally a 120-inch TV?
They are they're close, but I still, if I had to choose right now, if you told me, unlimited funds, unlimited space, I would still get like an 85-inch TV versus a 120-inch projector. So I'm hoping, in 10 years they catch up, but a lot of the projectors right now can still only do HDR10. Like they can't do Dolby Vision, which is the sort of the metadata advanced HDR. They can't do HDR10 plus. So they're still trying to like work through that. So they're not even actually up to speed with where the 4K format is on disc. So they're lacking there. And then, yeah, you have to, the issue of projectors, like you have to be so particular with your focus and with your placement of it and how dark the room is, and all of those things matter. And if you have perfect viewing conditions, then some of these new laser projectors can be close, but they still don't have all the technology that the TVs have. They don't have, like, an OLED TV right now blows away a projector when it comes to just like black levels and color, and it blows it away in my opinion. So they have a little ways to go. They're getting much better than they were even a few years ago, but it's right now you definitely would be sacrificing quality to a certain degree for size. I think I'd prefer the TV, but that's just me. I know people out there love their projectors, and I've seen some amazing projectors, but you really have to have the most controlled environment. And if you don't, I'd go with the TV every time.
So we've talked about streaming, we've talked about physical home media, but what gets you out into the theater away from your meticulously constructed home theater setup?
Well, I can tell you right now what's keeping me from the movie theater is these two kids I have that are under the age of 2. So it's been more difficult, but when I go to the theater, it's really got to be, I have a thing. I want to be there on the Friday night, opening night, or, Thursday night, one of those two. I want to be there on opening night. I want a full audience, and I want to have the experience. Like, that's what gets me there. Is some of my best movie watching experiences have been watching a movie opening weekend with a full audience, like watching Hereditary for the first time, nobody knowing what that movie was about or how crazy it was going to get, in a packed room full of people who didn't know this director. There's no pedigree here that people knew, oh, he's going to be kind of wild. And just the silence that happened halfway through the movie when the shocking scene takes place, and then the literal like screams and shouts from people at the end of the, I mean, it's incredible. Like, you just can't get that at home. And I've made sure to go see all the new Halloween movies opening weekend because I love those. I wanted to experience them with an audience. I saw like Interstellar in the movie theater in IMAX with a packed audience. It was just incredible. Like, people were just in awe at that movie. So that's what I go for. Like, I want it to be a packed audience. And as much as I love the indie movies and the smaller stuff, but that's where I feel like I can watch them at home, because people, unfortunately, I wish they would, but people don't sell out those theaters on opening night, or they're in smaller theater. You don't get that big screen, big audience experience. Like, I'd almost love to see a movie with, 1,000 people instead of just 300, and really like, experience it with a group. That's why you go to concerts. It's why you go to sports games. I mean, it's not because you're going to be on the field. It's not because you can't watch it at home. It's, you go for the experience. Like, that's what you're there for a shared group experience. So that's what gets me out. And it's got to be those big event movies. That's what's going to bring me back.
That's an interesting perspective, because I usually tune out the audience completely. And more often than not, I just get kind of annoyed when anyone anywhere else makes any kind of sound, because it's like ruining my immersion. However, I did get dragged out to see Top Gun Maverick on its opening weekend. And oh my God, that movie blew me away completely by surprise too. Because usually I don't like sort of, the middle of the lane mainstream Hollywood movies, because they're made for everybody. So by definition, they're not really gonna cater towards whatever specific tastes that I might have. But that movie was an exception. That was very impressive. Did you see it on opening weekend too?
My daughter was born right before then, it was very bad timing. Or, well, when did that come out? See, time is a construct when you have kids. none of it matters.
May, I want to say. I could be wrong, but I think it was May.
I think my son was just too young. We just didn't get out to do it. We were moving. My wife was pregnant again. It was just like, boy, we're not getting to the movies this summer. There's too much going on. So I hate to say that I missed that, but I did make sure to bring it to my parents' house, and I at least watched it with our entire family of 8. So I had a small shared group experience, which was really cool because my dad loved the original and was like, watched this, and I got him a big TV. He actually has an 8K TV, and he's got the sound system, and we watched it. We didn't just put it on. Like we jacked the sound up and watched it and shut the lights off, and he was like, oh my God, they finally made a movie like for me. Like this was incredible. And he watched it again like the next day, but when I left. So that was cool just to be able to do that. Like I want to have that experience, but I do get what you're saying because it feels like post COVID, every time I've gone to the theater, it's almost like the etiquette has gotten worse. I don't know if people forgot how to act.
Dude,
it's gotten worse lately.
Yeah, I went out to see a screening of Fifth Element because that was another anniversary release they were doing.
Yeah.
And 5 minutes into the movie, someone took a phone call and was just chatting for like 3 or 4 minutes. And then someone started smoking a cigarette soon after that. I've never seen that before.
No,
but,
it's like everybody lost their minds. I mean, we had smartphones and iPhones in 2018. Like, I don't know what COVID did to people to make them so comfortable in a movie theater, but it has gotten insanely bad recently. They need to address it somehow because it's annoying now. Recently, when I've gone to movies, I've been more annoyed, and all my favorite experiences are like pre-2020 movies where we had these like great audiences and just people were engaged. Like they were into the movie. If they did make noise and they had a reaction, like it was the movie. It wasn't because somebody Snapchatted them or something. And like it's gotten so bad recently.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you one place where you don't run into annoying theater goers, and that's the comfort of your own living room.
That's true. That's why I wait on a lot of this stuff. And now the stuff comes out on digital, 2 months later, unless it's, Top Gun or Avatar and it's just printing money at the box office. Like within 2 months, you've got a digital stream. Within 3 months, you've got the disc. So knowing what my theater experiences have been like recently, it's hard to sell me, especially if it's not a big event movie. You're just not going to get me out there anymore. I'll support you on the back end, but I'm annoyed by the way movie theaters have gone. But there's an Alamo Drafthouse coming to our area for the first time, and I'm like, okay, they're the ones that will actually throw you out and be like, shut up or you lose your ticket. So I may go give them a try. They're coming to the Boston area and opening a new theater for the first time ever up this way. So that could be a new place to check out.
I gotta admit, I'm a little jealous. But until then, maybe you should watch your films at home. Where can people catch your stuff, Jeff?
Yeah, so I'm on YouTube and pretty much all the social media platforms. If you search Films at Home, there's different variations on the ats and the tags with an underscore spaces. But if you just search Films at Home on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, you name it, TikTok, I'm there too. I'm everywhere. So search Films at Home. You'll find me. On YouTube, same thing. You can search Films at Home. You can go to youtube.com/@filmsathome. That's the address for the YouTube channel. And then my podcast it's on YouTube. I do a video version for all my interviews, whether it's just me talking or I have a guest. We record the video and that goes on YouTube. And then it's also on all your Spotify, your Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your audio. You can find me there, and that's just the Films at Home podcast. We keep it very simple. So really, I guess if you go into Google right now and you type in Films at Home, you'll find it. I don't think there's many other people out there that are using that. So you'll find me somewhere, but YouTube and the podcast is primarily where I'm at. And then, social media it's been fun too. It's a good way to connect with the community. So, I'm out there, and then I've actually also started writing for Bloody Disgusting and doing some physical media content for them. So you could find me there. If you search my name, you'll find some different articles and things too. So I'm out there. Come find me. Films at Home. Definitely check out the podcast. Check out the YouTube channel. If you got any interest at all in physical media, give me a chance and let me try to convince you with some of the reviews or some of, maybe even better, some of the topics I talk about that like cover that world and the business and the importance of it. Maybe better to convince you if you've never tried it. So come give it a try. I think you'll enjoy it.
Yeah, it's well worth a listen. And that's not just the interview voice saying, yeah, listen to this guy's content who I've been talking to. I've actually listened to many episodes and they are very good.
I can tell you've been picking the episodes off and different reviews. I was like, oh, he's a true listener, viewer. I appreciate that. So thank you. And I appreciate the kind words. And, just trying to keep this thing I love alive in a world where it's definitely declining and shrinking, but also morphing into something I think that might actually be better. So
of course,
that's what we're all about.
Yeah. I want to thank you again, Jeff. It's great having you on.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you for the opportunity. Media Play News is great, and I'm there every week following your stuff, and it's a great resource. So I appreciate the opportunity to come on.
Cool. Talk to you next time.
All right. Thanks.